The security guard grabbed Marcus Johnson by the arm so hard that his shoulder slammed into the glass door. Move! The guard barked. Several heads turned.
I told you to get him out of here.
Conversation stopped. A dozen wealthy investors standing inside the grand ballroom watched as a 17-year-old black teenager stumbled backward, nearly losing his balance. At the center of it all stood Richard Sterling, CEO, billionaire, the man about to close the biggest deal of his life. Richard adjusted the cuff of his tailored suit and stared at Marcus as if he were looking at trash on the bottom of his shoe. "I told you to get him out of here," Richard said coldly. The guard tightened his grip. Marcus looked around the room. Crystal chandeliers, million-dollar smiles, people who had more money than he could imagine, and not one person willing to ask a simple question. Why was he there? "I wasn't stealing anything," Marcus said. A few people laughed. Richard shook his head. "That's what they always say." Marcus felt heat rise in his chest. Not anger, humiliation. The kind that comes from being judged before speaking. The kind he had experienced hundreds of times since becoming homeless. As a guard shoved him toward the exit, Marcus noticed a thick stack of papers lying near a conference table. A legal binder. One page had slipped out. His eyes caught a sentence. Just one sentence. Something about patent ownership. Something that didn't look right. The guard pushed him again. "Keep moving." Marcus glanced back at Richard. "You might want to check page 8 to 7 before you sign." The room exploded with laughter. Richard smirked. "Get him out." The doors slammed shut. Marcus disappeared into the rain. None of them knew that within the next hour, those words would cost Richard Sterling $400 million. Before we continue, if you enjoy stories filled with shocking twists, powerful lessons, and unforgettable endings, make sure you subscribe, like the video, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's get back to the story. Richard Sterling loved power, not because of what it could buy, but because of what it made people do. People stood when he entered rooms. People laughed at his jokes. People agreed with him even when he was wrong. For 20 years, he had built Sterling Technologies into one of the fastest growing companies in the country, and today was supposed to be the crowning achievement of his career. A $400 million acquisition. Every major business publication was talking about it. Investors had flown in from across the country. News crews were waiting outside. If everything went according to plan, Richard would become one of the most influential executives in the industry. His chief legal officer, Linda Hart, approached him. "The final documents are ready." Richard smiled. "Good. The board members are already seated." "Excellent." Linda hesitated. "About that kid." Richard waved her off. "Forget him." He seemed very confident. Richard laughed. "He's a homeless teenager." Linda remained silent. Richard leaned closer. "Linda, do you honestly think some kid sleeping on park benches understands a $400 million acquisition better than our legal team?" "No, exactly." Richard turned away. The conversation was over. Across the city, Marcus sat beneath a bus shelter while rain pounded the streets. His hoodie was soaked. Water dripped from his sleeves. But he barely noticed. His mind was focused on something else. Page 8 to 7. The sentence he'd seen. The wording felt wrong. Dangerously wrong. Marcus closed his eyes. His mother's voice echoed in his memory. Never skim legal language. He remembered sitting beside her years ago. She had worked as a contract attorney before illness took her life. Most parents taught their children card games. His mother taught him contracts. At first he hated it. Then he learned something fascinating. A single sentence could change everything. One word could make someone rich. One word could make someone lose everything. She used to hand him documents and challenge him. Find the trap. Marcus became good at it. Very good. Eventually he started finding mistakes she missed. She would laugh and tell him he had a gift. A gift nobody knew about. Especially now. The rain intensified. Marcus stood. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. He needed to see that page again. Meanwhile, back at the hotel, executives filled the ballroom. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement. Investors shook hands. Lawyers reviewed notes. Photographers prepared cameras. Richard stood near the stage enjoying every second. One investor approached him. "Congratulations, Richard." "Thank you." This acquisition changes everything. Richard smiled. It certainly does. The investor laughed. After today, you'll be unstoppable. Richard liked the sound of that. Unstoppable. A few moments later, Linda approached carrying the final contract binder. Richard noticed concern on her face. What now? Nothing serious. Then why do you look worried? Linda opened the binder. I just want to do one final review. Richard groaned. Linda, your team spent 6 months reviewing this. I know. 3 law firms examined every page. I know. Then stop worrying. Linda nodded, but she still looked uneasy. Across town, Marcus had begun walking. The rain soaked him completely. People rushed past without looking at him. Cars splashed water onto the sidewalk. Nobody paid attention. Nobody cared. Marcus kept moving. His stomach growled. He hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon, but he ignored it. The contract bothered him more than hunger. By the time he reached the hotel again, the signing ceremony was minutes away. 2 security guards immediately recognized him. One stepped forward. You again? Marcus raised both hands. I'm not here to cause trouble. Then leave. I need to talk to someone. The guard laughed. No, it's important. Not my problem. Marcus looked through the glass doors. Inside, he could see executives gathering. Time was running out. If they signed that contract. The second guard stepped closer. Kid, leave. Marcus clenched his fists. Please. No, you don't understand. The first guard pointed toward the street. I understand perfectly. Marcus stayed at the ballroom, then back at the guards, then back at the ballroom again. Somewhere inside that building was a mistake capable of destroying everything. And nobody would listen. Not because he was wrong, because of who they believed he was. A homeless kid. Nothing more. As the guards escorted him away from the entrance for the second time, Marcus felt frustration boiling inside him. But he refused to quit. His mother hadn't raised him that way. And deep down he knew something terrible was about to happen. The only question was whether anyone would discover the truth before it was too late. Marcus stood across the street from the hotel, rainwater dripping from his sleeves as he stared at the glowing windows of the ballroom. Every instinct told him to walk away. Nobody wanted to hear him. Nobody believed him. Nobody cared. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that his mother would be disappointed if he gave up now. She had spent years teaching him one lesson above all others. If you see danger coming and stay silent, then you're helping the danger. Marcus looked at the hotel entrance again. The signing ceremony had to be starting. Time was running out. He took a deep breath and crossed the street. This time he didn't approach the main entrance. Instead, he walked toward the side entrance where catering staff and hotel employees came and went. The door opened. A woman carrying trays nearly bumped into him. Sorry, she said before rushing inside. Marcus slipped through before the door could close. His heart pounded. He wasn't sneaking in to steal. He wasn't sneaking in to cause trouble. He just needed 5 minutes. 5 minutes with someone willing to listen. He moved through a hallway and spotted a young hotel employee arranging glasses on a service cart. Excuse me. The employee glanced up. What? I need to speak with one of the lawyers. The employee immediately frowned. You're not supposed to be in here. It's important. They are busy. Marcus stepped closer. Please, just tell them someone needs to review page 87. The employee blinked. What are you talking about? A contract. The employee laughed. A contract? Yes. You mean the acquisition contract? Marcus nodded. The employee shook his head. Those lawyers bill more money in an hour than you'll see in a year. Marcus felt the words hit him. The employee wasn't trying to be cool. That made it worse. He genuinely believed it. As if Marcus couldn't possibly know anything useful because of the clothes he wore. I'm serious. The employee pushed the cart away. And I'm busy. Marcus watched him leave. Another door slammed shut. Another opportunity gone. Inside the ballroom, Richard Sterling stepped onto the stage. The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed. The attention felt wonderful. He adjusted the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this historic day. More applause. Richard smiled. For months he had imagined this moment. Now it was finally here. This acquisition represents growth, innovation, and opportunity. Investors nodded. Board members smiled. Everything was unfolding exactly as planned. Or so he thought. Back in the hallway, Marcus spotted a familiar face. One of the attorneys from earlier. The same man who had dropped the binder. Marcus hurried after him. "Sir!" The attorney toned. His expression immediately darkened. "You again?" "I need 1 minute." "I don't have 1 minute." "Please." The attorney sighed dramatically. "What?" Marcus swallowed. "There's a clause in the contract." The attorney rolled his eyes. "Of course there is." "No, listen." "I'm listening." Page 8 to 7. The attorney's patience evaporated. "What about it?" "The patent transfer language." The attorney froze for half a second. Marcus noticed. The man recognized exactly what section he was talking about. "It's wrong." The attorney laughed. "Wrong?" "Yes." The attorney crossed his arms. "And you know this because—" Marcus hesitated. The truth sounded ridiculous. "My mother taught contract law." The attorney burst out laughing. "You expect me to believe that?" "It's true." "Kid, hundreds of attorneys reviewed that document." Marcus felt desperation rising. "Then review it one more time." The attorney stepped closer. "Do you know who wrote parts of this agreement?" "No." "The best legal minds in the country." Marcus met his eyes. "They can still make mistakes." The attorney stared at him, then shook his head. "Unbelievable." Without another word, he walked away. Marcus stood alone. Again. Ignored. Again. Dismissed. Again. For a brief moment he considered leaving. Maybe they deserved what happened next. Maybe Richard Sterling deserved it. The man had humiliated him in front of hundreds of people. The laughter still echoed in his ears. Yet Marcus couldn't bring himself to think that way. Because innocent people were involved too. Employees. Investors. Families. A disaster wouldn't hurt only Richard. It would hurt everyone connected to the company. And Marcus knew it. Inside the ballroom, Linda Hart sat reviewing the final documents while Richard delivered his speech. Something continued bothering her. A tiny voice in the back of her mind. The kind experienced attorneys learn never to ignore. She flipped through pages. Page 72. Nothing. Page 78. Nothing. Page 83. Still nothing. Then she reached page 87. Her eyes moved across the text. Suddenly she stopped. Her stomach tightened. She read the paragraph again. Then a third time. The blood drained from her face. No. She leaned closer. No. Her hands started shaking. Across the stage, Richard continued speaking. Together we are creating the future. Linda shot out of her chair. Several people looked at her. She barely noticed. Her eyes remained locked on the page. A legal phrase buried deep within the contract had escaped everyone's attention. One sentence. 23 words. 23 words capable of destroying everything. Her breathing quickened. No. She flipped through supporting documents. Then flipped back. Then checked again. Each review made the truth worse. Far worse. Meanwhile, Marcus had reached the edge of the ballroom. Security still hadn't noticed him. He could see Richard on stage. Smiling. Celebrating. Completely unaware. Marcus looked around desperately. Someone had to listen. Someone. Anyone. Then he saw Linda. Her expression immediately caught his attention. She looked terrified. Marcus knew that look. She'd found it. She'd finally found it. Before he could move closer, a hand grabbed his shoulder. Hard. Security. Again. There he is. Marcus closed his eyes. Not again. The guard spun him around. You just don't learn, do you? I'm leaving. You're leaving right now. The guard began dragging him toward the exit. Inside the ballroom, Linda hurried toward the stage. Richard noticed her immediately. His smile faded. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Linda climbed the steps. Richard! He lowered the microphone. What? We need to stop. Richard frowned. What are you talking about? Stop the signing. The room grew quiet. Richard forced a laugh. "Linda, now isn't time." She placed a contract in front of him. "It is exactly the time." Richard looked annoyed. "Why?" Linda pointed at the page. His eyes scanned the paragraph. At first he looked confused, then concerned, then horrified. The color drained from his face. For the first time all day, Richard Sterling looked afraid. A murmur spread through the crowd. Investors exchanged worried glances. Board members leaned forward. One attorney stood. "What's happening?" Nobody answered. Richard continued reading. Each word felt like a punch to the stomach. The clause transferred ownership rights under circumstances nobody had anticipated. If the deal closed, Sterling Technologies would lose control of several cornerstone patents. Patents worth hundreds of millions. Patents that form the foundation of future products. The acquisition wasn't a victory. It was a trap, and they had been seconds away from signing it. The ballroom fell silent. Then one investor stood. "Richard." Another stood. "What's wrong?" Linda swallowed hard. "There's a serious issue." The room exploded into panic. Questions came from every direction. "What issue? How serious? Can't be fixed." Richard stared at page 87. Suddenly a memory flashed through his mind. A soaked teenager. A calm voice. One sentence. "You might want to check page 87 before you sign." Richard's heart stopped. Outside the ballroom, Marcus was being pushed toward the exit yet again. He didn't know what was happening behind him, but judging by the sudden shouting erupting inside the room, he had a feeling the truth had finally arrived, and it had arrived far too late. The shouting inside the ballroom grew louder as security dragged Marcus through the corridor. He could hear chaos now, not confusion. Chaos. "What do you mean it transfers the patents? Who approved this clause? This is a legal disaster." Marcus stopped struggling for a moment. His chest tightened. So they found it. Finally. But instead of relief, something heavier settled in his stomach. Because now it wasn't about whether he was right. It was about what came next. The guard shoved him harder. "Move!" Marcus stumbled but kept walking. Inside the ballroom, Richard Sterling stood frozen, staring at the contract as if it had turned into something alive. "This can't be real," he muttered. Linda's voice was shaking. "It is real. I triple-checked it. It was buried under cross-references in Section 12's amendment structure. No one flagged it because the language was mirrored in two separate jurisdictions." Richard looked up sharply. Who missed it? Silence. No one answered immediately. Then a lawyer spoke quietly. "Everyone." That word hit harder than any accusation. Everyone. 6 months of legal review. 3 law firms. Internal compliance teams. External auditors. And still, they missed it. Richard's hands tightened around the edge of the table. "No, no, no, no." An investor slammed his palm down. "Do you understand what this means? The acquisition becomes toxic the moment we sign." Another voice rose. "We could lose access to every future patent pipeline." Panic spread like fire. Richard suddenly turned to Linda. "Can we remove it? Redline it? Fix it before signing?" Linda shook her head. "It's already embedded in the structure. If we alter it now, the entire agreement resets under renegotiation clauses." A heavy silence followed. That meant delay. Delay meant competitors stepping in. Delay meant collapse. Richard felt something he hadn't felt in years. Loss of control. Outside the corridor, Marcus was shoved toward the hotel exit again. But this time, something different happened. A man in a suit rushed out of the ballroom, shouting, "Wait! Stop him!" Security froze. Marcus turned. The man pointed directly at him. "That's him. The kid. Don't let him leave." Marcus's heart skipped. Before he could react, another voice followed. "Bring him back." Richard's voice. Sharp. Urgent. Desperate. Marcus was grabbed, but this time not to be thrown out. To be pulled back inside. He didn't resist anymore. He already knew what had happened. They had found it. The guards escorted him through the doors. The moment Marcus stepped into the ballroom, the entire room turned toward him. Hundreds of eyes. No laughter now. No mockery. Only shock. Richard stepped forward. For the first time since Marcus had seen him, the CEO didn't look powerful. He looked shaken. "Did you?" Richard began, then stopped. His voice lowered. "Did you know about this clause?" Marcus met his eyes. "I told you." Murmurs spread through the room. Richard swallowed hard. "You read the contract." Marcus nodded. "I saw page 8 to 7. A ripple of disbelief moved through the investors. One of them whispered, "He's just a kid." Another replied, quieter, "A kid who was right." Richard's jaw tightened. Why didn't anyone listen to him? No one answered, because the truth was obvious now. They hadn't ignored the message. They had ignored the messenger. Richard stepped closer to Marcus. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Richard finally said it. The word stuck in his throat. "We were seconds away from losing $400 million. Marcus didn't respond immediately. He just looked at him, then quietly said, "You already lost something more important." Richard frowned. "What?" Marcus's voice stayed calm. "Respect." The room went silent again. Even the investors stopped moving. That word landed heavier than the financial loss. Respect. Richard looked around the room. For the first time, he saw what Marcus had seen earlier. People laughing at someone they didn't understand. People assuming intelligence based on appearance. People making a mistake that nearly destroyed them all. Richard slowly exhaled. Then his eyes dropped slightly. "Why did you try to warn us?" Marcus hesitated. Because no one had ever asked him that question before. He looked down for a moment. "My mother used to say, if you understand something dangerous and stay quiet, then it becomes your fault too." Silence. Linda slowly stepped forward. "Your mother was in legal work." Marcus nodded. "She worked contracts, corporate law, before she got sick." That detail changed the atmosphere instantly. Richard's expression shifted. "Her name? Angela Johnson." The moment he said it, Linda's eyes widened slightly. "I know that name," she whispered. Richard toned. "What?" Linda stared at Marcus. "She worked on early Sterling tech licensing frameworks years ago." Richard froze. "What?" Marcus continued quietly. "She used to say your company built its early structure off of drafting models." The room shifted again. History had just entered the present. Richard looked stunned. For the first time, the CEO didn't have a response. Only silence. Then slowly, he said, "I threw you out." Marcus didn't flinch. "Yes." "I humiliated you." Marcus nodded again. "Yes." Richard's voice cracked slightly. "And you still tried to help us." Marcus looked at him directly. "I wasn't helping you." A pause. "I was preventing everyone else from paying for your mistake." That sentence hit harder than anything else that day. Richard stepped back slightly. For the first time, he had no authority in the room, only awareness. Slowly, he lowered his head. "I was wrong." The words came out quietly, but clearly, a billionaire CEO admitting it in front of everyone. "I judged you," he continued, "and I almost destroyed everything because of it." Marcus didn't respond immediately. The room waited. Then Marcus said, "You didn't almost destroy everything because you judged me." Richard looked up. Marcus continued, "You almost destroyed everything because you stopped listening." Silence. Not even breathing filled the room. Then Richard nodded slowly. He turned toward the investors. "We are not signing anything today." A wave of relief moved through some, frustration through others. But everyone understood the truth. The deal was dead for now. Richard turned back to Marcus. "What do you want?" The question surprised him. Marcus blinked. "What do you mean?" "For this," Richard said. "For saving us." Marcus hesitated, then shook his head. "I don't want money." Richard frowned. "Then what do you want?" Marcus looked around the room. At the suits, the wealth, the power. Then back at him. "A chance." A pause. "To be seen before I'm judged." Silence again. Then Richard nodded. Slowly. "Then you'll have it." And for the first time that day, no one laughed.